So hello everyone. Let's get back to the table here. And this afternoon I wanted to show you a bit of a lesson on, oh, by the way, I'm sorry. I hope you're having a really great day. Uh, sorry about that. It's turning out really nice today. It's getting to be warmer. So we're heading to spring. Yay! Okay, so what I've got here is I did a little draw out of like a window. It's a painting I was going to do, but I got drawing it out when I was thinking I could make a lesson out of this for you. So what I want to do is I want to show you how to use a little bit of water versus a lot of water with a small brush and a larger brush, because even though I have a larger brush, it has a really nice point. And I can get into little areas like this, even with this larger brush. Or I could use a smaller brush, such as this, which will hold less water, and I can still get in here and still do larger areas. It really comes down to preference, because I know lots of people who do large spaces with smaller brushes, small spaces with larger brushes, and everything in between. So it's what works for you and what you like. So what I'm going to do here, first of all, I'm going to use the small brush. I'm going to dip it into the water, tap it a little bit on the paper towel, and I'm going to go, these are apples, so without wetting my page, I'm going to go in here, and with the tip of my brush, I'm going to paint this apple, right? I forgot to leave a little white space there, so I want to dab out. So I take the paint off my brush, tap it on the paper towel, come in and soak up, we call it, some paint. Soak it up in those areas you want the highlight. That is something that took me a long time to get to do. When you're first learning watercolor, you're so focused on everything that you're trying to do that the idea of, geez, I don't know if I've got enough light going on. The idea of remembering to leave the white space is pretty hard to do at first. So what I did was a little bit of water on that brush, wiped it off a little, took my paint and painted it. I'm going to go back in the same way and around the areas on the bottom, more shaded area of the apple, in between the apples and on one of the sides. I'm going to put in some more pigmented color to, so we have some variances of values going on. Now, what I'm going to do now, wash that paint off, dry it off on the towel. I'm going to use this big one. I'm going to do the same thing. My brush, I dip it in, take a lot of that water off on the paper towel. My paints have a little water in it from wetting them, that's all. With the tip of this brush, I'm going to go right in and even right next to the other one. And the reason why I can do that is because I don't have any water on the other places, the other apples. And I don't have a lot of water on this one that I just did above it, because I did it the same way. So you can see with the large brush and the beautiful tip, I can do the same work as I did with the smaller brush with the beautiful tip, okay? Now what I'm going to show you, without ruining what I'm trying to do for a painting, I'm going to take the small one, I'm going to wet it, I'm going to come over here. I'm not going to go next to those because I don't want it to spread, right? So I'm going to wet that. I don't want it sopping. I just want enough water so that when I go in, if you can see what's happening, it's moving, right? The water's moving the paint's moving around in the water. You'll have to, more than likely, you'll have to zoom in for that. Remember to leave your white space. I just had to take some paint out to do that. So I'm going to come back in with water on my brush, still water on the paper. I want to darken up this side, so I'm going to go in. I'm touching the paper is what I'm doing, and the paint is moving all around. But it's not going out of the apple because nothing around it is wet. If I had, I'm going to do it again. I want it to be a little darker on one area, certain areas. If my paper was also wet, if I had wet these other apples, it would spread into there. So I'm going to show you that by getting that wet. I'm going to come up here and wet this apple. I'm also going to wet, well, it's kind of hard right now because we've got, all right, let's do it on the other side. Okay, let's wet an apple here and an apple here. So we got one here and one here. Tap off some water. This one's dry and this one's dry. These are dry around it. Just these two are wet. Before it dries, I'm going to come over here, tap in my paint, see it moving around, and I'm going to put some paint on, and I'm going to do the same thing with that one I wet. And see, it just went right into that one. Did you see that? You might have to catch that with a slow motion. But what happened was because they're both wet, the water spread both areas to this one I'm painting in, and it spread to this one because those areas were wet on the paper, kind of. And you can see here, it's moving a little bit over to this area because that got a drop of water on it. So the water that you use, right now I am taking the paint off my brush, drying it, and coming in and mopping up, it's called, what's I got around it. It doesn't matter that much in this particular painting because they're all red apples. But if it wasn't that way, you'd want to go in and get that right away. So let's do the same thing. Take the water off, put your paintbrush in the water, get the paint off, dry it, come in, dab a couple areas to get your white space, your highlight. Sometimes you're tongue-tied, So I'm going in now with less water on my brush. I did not add more water. I don't want more because I wanted to be able to control it to put some of those dark areas in. Okay? Hope that's making sense so far because we just did that all with these two. Very small, quite large. Okay, now the other thing I'm going to do, around these areas here, it's going to be just a dark, it's like shadow, down underneath inside the bowl. Now I am not wetting the paper, so I'm taking my brush with the wash of, I've got some sepia and some green, and with a little bit of water in the paint on the palette and very little on my brush because I don't want it to spread. In fact, hardly any on my brush because I don't want that to spread to the red. So with next to no water on my brush, I'm going around those places with the tip of this brush, as you can see, to make those shadow areas. Going to go back into my paint, continue around. This one's a little wet, so I've got to be careful. That's where these little brushes with their little points, or that lovely bigger brush with a beautiful point, all comes into play. Watercolor dries light, so you're going to have to go back in. Very little water, no water on your paper, as I'm doing here. And continue to get that to the consistency of color or pigment that I want, that's fine. Now, a good thing to know is I cannot go in here next to these that are still fairly wet or next to the sepia blend, the shadow blend, and paint and have it stay in the same spot because it's still wet. So we will avoid those areas for now. My allergies are acting up today. And we're going to go back over here with washed my paint off because I had a darker color, tapping and wiping the water off my brush, going into the red, which has a little water to keep it have to have a little more water on my brush to move it around. And with this awesome tip, we're going to be very carefully putting in this apple's red. I mean this apple's red color. It's amazing how we get so tongue-tied, honestly. I'm going to go up here. I don't need to get more paint on my brush right now. I can continue right on with the amount of pigment that I have on the brush already. Wiggle my brush around here and there. Try to remember to keep your white spots. See how much better it looks when you do keep the white spots versus when you have to take it out. Either way works fine, but I try so hard now to try to remember to do it first, keep it out first, because see, once it dries like it is here, very, very much harder to get it out and get that nice white of the paper. You're basically, especially with red staining, it's not going to happen, but it all still works. Now, this sepia, this darker shadow, is pretty dry. It's a little bit wet, but it's pretty dry. So with just a damp brush and dry paper, I'm going to go in and I can put in my color. Nothing's going to spread because I'm not doing the technique in this particular area called wet on wet, which is the reason it would spread if I was. Water in water. This is more like damp, watery brush on dry. And you see how that works? We can come over here. We can do the same thing. I still don't have to get more paint. I can use the paint that I've got going on here. Remembering to leave, I can come back over onto these ones that are dry and add the darker areas. See, isn't that coming out great? And I can do that. I'm going to use the drier brush with drier paint for this little apple that's sort of sitting in the, way down in the bowl. I'm going to use the same amount that I have on my brush here. A little bit more water on my brush just to be able to move it around. And that's another thing. You got paint down already. You just put some water on your brush to move it around. Okay? So far that's looking really good, right? I'm going to probably take a little of that color off. I'm actually going to go into a little orange. I don't know if... I'm not sure what that color is. Vermilion, I think. And I'm going to dab some of that just for the varying of color in some of the apples, because you know how apples are. They're not just all one color. I'm actually going to take some of that sepia, and over here on the side that I'm calling shade, I'm going to add some in. I have just a little water on my brush, not much, little water in the paint, and I'm putting shadow in there. Meaning that on the left side of this page, I'm proclaiming, so to speak, that that's where the sun's coming from. The light actually is coming from that side because I have a light right up above here. Okay, so now I'm going to finish a lot of this offline. Now, if I wanted to I'm going to make this bowl a pretty blue. I am going to take the water. This is dry enough where I don't have to worry. You want to make sure, that's kind of another thing, you want to make sure that what you're going up next to paint is dry, or it's just going to run. Okay. This is also, I think I'm not sure if I mentioned it, this is cold pressed paper, so it's got like a roughness to it. I usually use hot pressed paper. I absolutely love hot pressed paper, but I really like cold pressed too, and I got it on sale, so I thought I would use this. It's a little less expensive, so it's a little less quality, but still very workable to do these exercises. Okay, so I've put some water down here because I want it to spread. So I'm going over to a pretty blue here. Put it on my palette. I want it a bit watery because I don't want it, I want it to be a watery type of a light wash. So you see, I'm putting it into the water. I'm maneuvering it around, trying to think about how I want, I guess got some more color, a little too much water on my brush, so I'm taking some off. I'm keeping this side lighter on purpose, going back in with a little more pigment. Now, mind you, as we've talked in other videos, there's water on here, so it's going to kind of do its thing. It's not going to come out here because I didn't wet anything out here. Only this area that is my bowl. You know those beautiful glass bowls you can get that are colors? Also, I'm going to get a little purple because some of this area, like under here, need a little more of that red. I mean, I didn't use red. Well, okay. That's all right. We make it work on the palette. Okay, so I got a little bit of reddish and purplish. And put that underneath here where the shadow would be. Kind of, I'm going to outline it a little bit with this purplish color. I love the outlining. I think it's pretty. I'm using just the tip of this brush, okay? That's all I'm using. Tip of the brush. Till I get down here where I use some of the belly of the brush to get some purple in there. Ooh, that's pretty, huh? And then, because this is going to be a little darker, and you want the lines to be a little darker, and this here, we're just going to get a little more water here. The paper's soaking up the water. Put a little water on my brush. And this bottom half, I'm going to make just a bit darker than the top half. It has a bit of purple in it, but I want to leave out the highlight. I want to make sure that I do that. Take some paint out there. Take some paint out there. That's pretty. That's really pretty. I'm going to take a little bit of a darker blue, and with very little water on my brush, I'm going to literally outline, so to speak, with a little bit of paint, as you can see, and bringing it up a little bit like this for the bottom part. And these lines here with the tip, a little bit less water, more pigment. Back here, add some of the darker, because this is my darker side, my shadowy side, so I want to, this is my lighter side. Okay, now if you can see this, I've got a drop of water about to want to come down and plop into my paper, into my painting. We don't want that. You can fix it, but you try not to have that happen, because when that drops down into my painting, because it's wet, it would move that around. Maybe where I don't want it, probably be fine, but for the purpose of this, we're not going to let that happen. It's a good example in a teaching moment. So there we go. Keep this fairly light over here. Just using a little more paint with my tip for the lines and the belly for the other part of it. Now here, what they call hard lines, you see how that's defined there? So take the brush, put it in the water, wipe it off a bit, just with water. Come in, swiggle it around so we don't have what's called hard lines right there. I didn't want any right there. If it was somewhere where I did, well, I would just leave it that way. Another place is right here. So we want to soften that. Make that, just swoosh it around a bit. Wipe your brush off, come in, put the color, a little more purple there on this side where it's, I kind of wiped it off. I didn't want to do that. Okay. Whenever you see that little bubble coming down of water, you just tap it off on your brush. That's pretty. I like that very much. Okay. All right, what I wanted to do now was kind of show you, these are the window panes, and they were a brown color. I can use whatever brush I want to use, but I probably won't use this big fat one. I might use this smaller round one, but I might use this flat one because I've got some lines here that I want to stay in, right? So what I'm going to do, simply because I do want to have a bit of blending into this wood, so it's kind of going to be more than one color, I'm wetting my brush and I'm coming right down just within the lines of my drawing and wet that. I'm going to go get some different colors. I'm actually going to use some of the greens on my palette. Whoa, that was a little too much. I'm going to use some, what do you call it? Burnt sienna. I'm going to use some sepia. And I'm going to kind of pat that all in like that on my palette, and then get some water and get a real light. And with the side of my brush, you see, it's even a little too much water. And with the side of my brush, I'm going to just, this is how I'm choosing to do it. There's many, many ways that these things can be done. I'm actually going to get a little red in there. Dab it off. I have a few colors on my brush right now because I want this, wood to look like old wood does, you know, when you have old wood. Light areas, dark areas. Let me see here. I want to get a little. And I'm just coming down the paper. I want to kind of define my sides. I'm going to pick this up on the chisel a little more, come down very carefully. As you can see, nothing's spreading to anywhere else but these lines I'm working in, because this is where I wet it. I didn't wet outside of it. Whoops, my hand moved there. Okay, just to quicken this up a bit. I can go in here and I can take some yellow ochre, come back in, put in some yellow ochre here and there, right? I can come in with some, I think this is vermilion or something like that. Add that in, you know, that rich red wood that looks so pretty. I think we've got some of that here at the house. And just add that in, pretty, just to give it the pretty, and even come in, take the paint off my brush, dry it a bit, come in and add some highlighted spots, some places where there's no paint. So that's how that works. And I'm going to do all of the wood parts the exact same way. And I don't want this video to go very long. So now you see, as this is drying, how much lighter it got. But in this case, I wanted it to dry that light. it's one of those bowls you can kind of see through. You know, it has a tint of a color. Now, I think the only other thing I'm going to show you, and I'm actually going to use this brush, I believe. Let's see which one is larger. These Transin brushes are really nice. They have a beautiful tip. And I'm going to do something with this right here. I'm going to try to get, I don't know if I have the colors on my palette. So I'm going to go into, I happen to have this, I'm not going to wet the page. It's a metallic paint. They're metallic paints. They're actually Daniel Smith metallic paints. I'm going to use those to make this with this little, as you can see, I'm using this big brush with this wonderful tip, which is what's making the whole thing work out. And I'm just going to paint my vase with this beautiful tip. Look at this. It's amazing what these brushes are like. On this side, it's darker because it's the shadow side. Oh, I really like that. I really, really like that. Then I want to get this part done. Take a little more water on my brush, take that paint off, and put a color there on the inside of the, and this is going to have a little sparkle, as you can see. Well, with the right light, it will have, I'm seeing the sparkle. Of course, I've got the light right here. And then put a little bit of darker on the inside where it's shadowy, right? That's going to be pretty when it dries. So I think this has gone long enough, this video. So I think you got the gist. Remember to wash off your brush really well. Swish it around several times. Wash it off, wipe it off, form it if you can onto your, same thing with the flat one that I did. So I hope that was a good lesson for you, a bit of a lesson on the paper, the way you use the water, the way you use the paint, the way you use the brushes, and how they all work together within a painting. I'm going to finish this offline and then come back probably adding in some curtains and some other things. I'm not sure how much I'll get done first, but I'm really liking the way that vase came out. And as a matter of fact, you could actually add I'm going to go into the mauve, and while it's still a little wet, this color is called mauve. And that just sort of came to my mind, that color, just to sort of add in there for a bit of other, vases have all these colors going on. Just with this little bit of a tip of the brush. You see that? How pretty that is? Oh, I like that. That's nice. Okay, so for today, we're going to call this done. Please zoom in, zoom out, slow down, speed up, whatever you need to do. Watch it more than once and try it out. Or watch it just to learn and get, glean and get some learnedness under your belt, because it takes a lot of that as well to do watercolor. It's not an easy medium, but it can be done, absolutely can be done. I know I'm one of them. I did not think I'd be able to do watercolor, even though I painted with acrylic for many, many years. Finally, I just said I'm going to do it, and that's it. And so I've been teaching myself. I've been doing it for quite a while now. And literally, I've fallen in love with this medium. And I know you will too, and I know you can do it. So check out my other tutorials. Glean from those. They're all beginner friendly, because that's my whole reason for this channel, is to help you overcome what I had to overcome if you want to watercolor paint. So have a great rest of your day, folks, and bye for now.